listening to Unfiltered with Muhammad Uncut, a podcast about personal growth and authentic leadership. If you're looking for tips on how to manage others, get ahead, and make your way up the corporate ladder, this is not the show for you. This podcast is about being of service to others, leading from the heart, and evolving into a better version of yourself. Each episode brings you motivated stories about unfiltered leadership and authentic leaders, those who involve others, use their influence to amplify diverse perspectives, and inspire teams to achieve collective results. If this sounds like you, keep listening. Welcome to the Unfiltered Podcast. Unfiltered is the podcast for leaders who involve others, use their influence to help them rise, and inspire them to become better versions of themselves. The Unfiltered Podcast showcases leaders who lead from the heart to make a positive change. And we have an unfiltered leader with us today. So excited and so honored to have Steve with us. Steve, I'm going to make sure that I can say your name properly, but I know you're going to correct me. Wohlenhaus?
Very good. Yeah, you should have seen that on the back of a hockey jersey, my friend. It went from one shoulder all the way to the other side. You couldn't even make it out. So I'm proud of you.
Now, I'm going to guess this is German?
It is.
It's German. Ich weiß nicht, ich nicht sprechen Deutsch. I took it for 1 year and I never kept up with it, but maybe one day I'll go back to learning German.
You speak better than I do. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, my friend. So I want to let my listeners know who you are, because you're a gentleman who comes with a lot of heart, and we're going to learn about what makes you tick today and how you help people keep motivated. So I'm going to just give them a bit of background about who you are. So Steve, I know that you started with Weatherology in 1987 as a meteorologist out of Minneapolis. You've won several Emmy Awards for your science programming. Love to hear about that. And throughout all the years of your work, you've maintained this passion for keeping people in local communities informed during critical weather situations that evolved into a flourishing business, which you call Weatherology today. So what does Weatherology do? Weatherology focuses on disseminating weather information to local radio stations, and the list of stations, I believe, has exceeded 1,200 to date. And if that passion for keeping people safe is not enough, Steve has recently embarked on a personal journey to help people improve the quality of their life. And I can tell you, he's not only inspiring, but he's extremely effective. He's developed the anatomy of success and has dedicated himself to teaching people how to define success on their terms and to live the abundant life we all desire. Steve believes by focusing on critical areas of importance such as health, healthy relationships with family and friends, healthy intimate relationships, and more satisfying work, people can enhance their prospects for experiencing more happiness. That's why he's here today to share his expertise on leadership, business, sales, and marketing, motivational speaking, technology, innovation, and what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Welcome to the Unfiltered Podcast, Steve. Thank you for being our guest today.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it. And we're close neighbors. I'm assuming you're a Maple Leafs fan.
I'm not a hockey fan, but I'm Canadian. I have to say, yes, I'm a fan.
You better watch it. That's blasphemy where you're at, my friend.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. You cannot. Yes, I'm a great Maple Leafs fan. You better believe it.
That's funny. So, yeah, you let me know what you'd like to talk about. I'm always receptive to questions and just love to kind of go in the direction you prefer to meander in.
Well, I know what you're all about. I've been following you for a while on LinkedIn and your various social media. I watch your inspirational videos, and they are definitely inspirational. They're very motivating. They help get me to a different place of energy, because when I watch you in your videos, you've got energy. It makes me want to get up and move, and we can see that you love the outdoors. It's part of who you are. You're outdoors right now. So tell us, this love for helping people and love for nature and love for what you do with the weather, where did this come from? How were you inspired?
Well, when I was younger, grew up in a rural area outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul. My folks owned radio stations, but most of my friends were farmers, big dairy farms. And so I spent most of my childhood helping on the farm and harvesting and around ponds and lakes and nature. So just acquired this natural fascination for that lifestyle. Of course, played sports, and then being in the broadcast business at such an early age, watching my parents as entrepreneurs in a business I was intrigued by, evolved into a fascination, which quickly developed into my dad giving me an opportunity to do some on-air work at a very early age, 14, on some of the radio stations. And then from there, it quickly turned into, by the time I got to college, an interest in meteorology, which obviously was a very big part of my upbringing here, where we have all sorts of different weather types, winter storms, as you know, and severe weather this far north is very common in the summertime. So I grew up appreciating the destructive nature of severe weather, and gain a healthy respect for it, for lack of a better description. And so that quickly evolved into me pursuing business and meteorology in college. Quickly got into a major market at age 21. I was the youngest weather anchor ever in a major market in the US, which is one of a group of 20 big markets like Philadelphia, Minneapolis, Chicago. And so I found myself there at an early age. At the same time, I started doing updates for radio stations in the area, and discovered there was a real big demand, because I kind of brought personality and science together in a way which nobody really had before, and made it interesting. And so our list of stations started to grow, and quickly I made the decision to focus on that full time. And today, as you mentioned, we're the largest satellite weather radio network in the world, syndicated by Westwood One. We're the single most successful program on the Westwood One network, with an audience that's 4 times the size of their average audience. And now that's evolved into some digital tools that we've created with real human voice translating text in real time, which we integrate into vehicles and at home through smart speakers. And we're on the precipice of doing some revolutionary things that will be mind-boggling over the next several years. So yeah, as you can tell, I love what I do. So and I wish I could say that it's all my doing, but I learned a long time ago to get the hell out of the way. I hire remarkable people. If I have a gift, it's I know how to spot remarkable people before they even know they're remarkable. And I pull it out of them, and I give them the opportunity to get behind the wheel and drive before they're ready. And every single time, people exceed my expectations. And I wish more leaders understood that. For whatever reason, we just underestimate people. But my experience has been just the opposite. When you believe in people, give them the belief that they can believe in themselves. They do extraordinary things every single time.
And Steve, talking about extraordinary, from your response, I don't know where to start, because you touch on so many extraordinary topics about who you are as an individual and what you've done, how you found a niche. Because, when you think about it, when you don't get up one day and say, today I'm going to learn about providing the best weather service for North America or across, right? And it's something that definitely isn't something at the top of everyone's mind. But you found a niche, and then you brought your personality and your experience and your background into it. You talked about how your dad got you into this. You talked about your passion and how you get others into it. And you start talking about leadership styles. And that's, why we're here today. And I can tell you're an unfiltered leader, because you believe in involving people, getting them, to be part of your vision. And, your influence is that you get in there, you share, but then you're quickly out of the way and you're inspiring them with what you do. And, you look to that inspiration with others, and that comes through, right? So I want to go to this idea that you believe leadership is not this command and control. Leadership is get in, get people on board, get them excited, and then get out of the way. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think that largely develops as a result of your own personal efforts to do the work every one of us needs to do to become a better version of ourselves. And I can promise you, I started this business at 21. I'm in my mid 50s today. So the learning process for me is no different than anybody else. I was very intense, still am, but it's channeled more differently than it was in my 20s, when I was difficult to work for because my expectations were so high. And because I was such a perfectionist at that time in my life, working for somebody like that oftentimes results in a very difficult divide, because that person wants so much from you and they don't quite know how to articulate how to make that happen, it often manifests itself in frustration and anger because you're not living up to the standard that I've created. So you're the problem and you just have to go. And then I finally had an epiphany, hired a chief operating officer, and that was the first really wise decision that I made in business, where I delegated full responsibility of the operation to somebody that already had developed that ability to work well with people and provide the leadership, calm, reserved, one of those types of people. I was a raging lunatic, just pure adrenaline, and made things happen in the infancy stages as a result of my drive, which I still have today, but I channel it. So I think that was part of the process. And over the years, I've become, just fascinated by things my dad used to talk about before they were fashionable. Emotional intelligence, self-awareness. He used to tell me these things when I was 18, 19 years old, before books were ever written about it. I had no idea where he was getting this stuff from. And so he really indoctrinated me early on in the need to examine yourself, how you're behaving around other people, and how we conduct ourselves can really adversely affect the synergy and dynamics with other people. So I really, truly believe in this stuff, and I know it works because I practice it. And I can promise you that for a small company, we scare all of our competitors that are enormously larger. IBM Weather Channel is our biggest competitor, and we're a fraction of their size, but they spend more time paying attention to what we're doing than we do about what they're doing, because we're always innovating, creating. We don't live in
and
that
that's your
world.
entrepreneurial spirit, right? That's what you can do differently. You're smaller, but the impact is probably bigger, huge.
Well, we move at such an efficient, quick pace, and that's the big thing that most companies that are larger miss, because they have to, through concession and committee, have to arrive at decisions we can make overnight and execute the next day. So we've been blessed, and I have learned. In fact, I'm out here. This is my land. I spend hours a day. All these videos I create are out here. I mean, this land goes all the way to the river, and it's amazing wildlife. I have moose and wolves and deer and fox, and I mean, it's amazing. I see all those things every single day, and so this is a critical part of my process to become a better person. I really believe this is where people need to be frequently to get away from the busyness that most CEOs and leaders are consumed with. And I tell people, it's like, these aren't bad people. They're just so overwhelmed, and the pressures are so enormous because profits are driving most of the decisions that need to be made, and they never really have the opportunity to just take a deep breath and do the things they're really well equipped to do, but they just can't because there's meetings every 15 minutes and commutes and everything else. So, when I talk about leadership, it's not in an effort to belittle anybody, because I know a lot of smart CEOs that are incredible, that are doing great things right now. But I also know a lot that are struggling and overwhelmed because there's just so much demand put on their plate. And then there's also the group, as you will know, that are just, they come from that world of hierarchy, academic achievement, obedience, and all those things that are so traditionally ingrained in people. And they bring that into these work environments, and they run around sharing cliches that sound wonderful, like why and drives and stuff, but they don't really understand what those things may mean, or why we need to maybe think those things through more carefully and really determine why that's relevant or isn't relevant, and what we need to do to maybe make that idea more relevant to us in our organization. So, we've been super fortunate that we've found incredible people that are highly independent and that operate at a tremendously high level of self-motivated work ethic. And if you just give those people the latitude, I've just discovered that they really come to you when they need you for your help, not the other way around,
And that nimble approach that you have to your entrepreneurial business, it's not that bigger businesses can't have it. It really comes to the style of leadership, and you've been exposed to leadership all your life, as you're saying. You've been exposed to leadership within family. And I think when we can start looking, that leadership isn't just about the walk and talk at work. Leadership is about how it starts at home. It starts with our personal lives. It starts with how we walk and talk as human beings. And when we make that connection and stop dissecting ourselves and dividing ourselves between this is my work persona and this is my personal persona, when we can merge those two together and have integration, and even more important than balance, it's that level of integration where I'm okay with who I am. I can, role model, not role play behavior for people in my family and close friends. I can do that in the same way for people at work. And I know that it's not about me, it's about what I can give. And, listening to your story, to listen to how your dad inspired you and your business ethics, and even your connection with nature. You talk about the destructive force of nature, yet it is the passion that you have for your work and for your own inspiration. I can tell in your videos and in your talks, that same passion and incredible force that we see daily. I saw it last night, just before our talk. We had one of the biggest thunderstorms here in Southwestern Ontario in London. It was incredible and so fitting before our conversation. But that same force, I believe, is the same force that gives you your passion and drives you to move forward. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that where this comes in from?
Well, I have a natural fascination. Like I said, it grows when you're younger and you live in a place like this where you see these ominous storms blow in over the prairie and the tornado warning signals go off. And as any person who's confronted with big things like hurricanes and tornadoes, you are immediately humbled, because here's this remarkable thing you have no control over that's coming into, where you live, and you have to respond accordingly. You don't get the luxury of trying to stand up and make a stance. You have to kind of acquiesce and say, okay, you're in control. I'm heading to the basement. And so this respect and appreciation is very symbolic, I think, in many ways. And then it's just the love I have for nature is just because I grew up in a place where I've had that around me my whole life. And I chose to turn that in the direction of just reflection and humility. And whenever I walk my land, I'm constantly reminded of how small we are. And I think that's oftentimes missing from most people's personal development, is there's this perception that we somehow are so important, and we somehow are so powerful, and we somehow have this ego that needs to be satisfied. And I think you see that around the world oftentimes, in politics, wherever you look. You see these folks that get so consumed with this idea that they have this control and power. It kind of goes to their head. And it's really, to me personally, uninspiring, because it just reeks of no humility. And so this keeps me grounded. This keeps me grounded. And I think we all need to, on a daily basis, remind ourselves of how small we are and how similar we are. And that's the other thing I've discovered from my extensive travels all over the world. I've been blessed to travel everywhere, and I meet people from every walk of life. And one of the things I learned a long time ago is that some of the happiest people on this planet have the least. And I could never put that together, because as a young person, I always aspired to have big houses and cars, and I've gone full circle. And when I talk about this stuff, people have a difficult time understanding and often want to debate me. And I always reassure them I'm coming from a position of experience, so I can speak to this because I've got the life most people want to have. And I'm no happier today than I was when I was riding my bike to work, because my dream was all about the journey. And that journey continues, and I love the journey, and I'm still on it. And I'm constantly evolving, changing, growing, developing. And there's never a moment where I say, that's enough. I guess I'm where I need to be, smart enough. I read every day. I meet people like you every day. And I think when you really, really truly understand what humility is and understand what compassion is and empathy, you get away from a lot of these issues that are pulling people apart today that we feel compelled to fight about for whatever reason. We still have to fight about all these ridiculous things that divide us. And to me, it's like, hey, if you have a higher power you believe in, like I do, then at the very least, you need to understand the one feature all religions have, which is love. And it's that simple. You weren't ordained with the responsibility of condemning anybody. I'm not sure if you know that or not, but so you're just supposed to love, and then leave the big decisions up to your maker, who's going to be the one to take issue with things if it's a problem. And so I keep it super simple. And when you live your life like that, I'm telling you, everybody's a blessing. Every person you meet is a blessing. You're not better than anybody else. When I take my kids on trips, I meet house cleaners, and I have them leave me candies and treats and gifts when I leave, because they've never been treated at these opulent places I stay at so nicely. Because most people that stay there are kind of arrogant. They're used to the, finer things in life, and they're demanding. And I'm so lucky to be here. I want to share this with my kids, and these are people that are here making this experience amazing. And so those lessons I've been able to teach, and so that's my message, and I hope it catches on, because I'm not saying I've got all the answers, but I know for a fact that this type of leadership works, because we have the most successful company of its kind in the world that does what we do. And it's not because of me. It's because I was smart enough to recognize there's a few things I do really well, and I focus on those few things. And then I leave everybody else alone to do what they're really good at. And I'm amazed at how many people think they got to be involved in every aspect of the business and overseeing
It's
every aspect of
overwhelming.
it.
You absolutely can't do that. I mean, leadership is about being able to involve others, and it's about creating the team. It's about, it's like a stream. You need to be the stream where everybody can bathe in your thoughts and your passion, and you share similar values. When you talk about love, it reminds me about, I was 18, I was reading Leo Buscaglia, the Doctor of Love. And, I was inspired, right? And I was inspired by his book. To this very day, it moves me. And I know his writing style is, I don't want to say dated, but the way we approached society is different back in the 90s than it is today. But the message of love doesn't change. And the message of humility shouldn't change. And it's that ability to recognize, like when you talk about the force of nature and seeing the tornado, and it can be destructive, right? Many things outside of us can be destructive, but it's when we can make peace with that force and recognize what we can control and we can't. And, we don't walk around with our weather. We don't walk around all the time being influenced by the fact that it's raining or it's sunny, by the fact that somebody behaves in a certain way or not. We can recognize what forces we control and which ones we don't. And that gives us the peace. And I believe that's where humility starts to really allow us to become the sort of persons that others like and want to be around. So whether it's, leaving candy for somebody and make them feel important, whether it's the people on your team recognizing their skills and what they bring to work with you, any interaction that we have with others, if we can always think, how can I make this interaction better? How can I make it about them? And I think you get into this. I was trying to lean into what you're writing about in your latest book, The Anatomy of Success. You talk about, you focus on helping people find more satisfaction in life and concentrating on what you call the 4 tenets of equanimity. Could you please explain what these are?
Yeah, I came up with that when I wrote that book right after my father passed away, because I wanted to simplify. I'm not a big advocate of formulas and recipes. I don't think they work, because each one of us is very different, learns very differently, motivates ourselves very differently, or requires more motivation. Motivation isn't something I have to worry about. It's internal. I create it at such a high level of production. I've got surplus that I can share with you guys through my videos and stuff, because I get up at 3:30 every day. I can't wait. No alarm clock. I'm out of bed, ready to go, and I work until 10, 11. And I'm not advocating no sleep, but it's an important part of running a business if you want it to succeed. It's like I tell people, you don't have the luxury of doing everything you want to do, and health was a critical part of it. I've worked out every single day, 7 days a week since I started this company back until I was 14 years old. So I believe health is at the foundation of being able to operate at a high level of efficiency. So that's one of the 4 tenets that I really strongly believe in, and that's mentally and physically taking care of yourself, and not, shortcuts. I see a lot of our friends on LinkedIn who I love that sell fitness advice and health advice. And oftentimes it's like, hey, have a Coke, you can cheat. It's like, no, we don't do cheating at Anatomy of Success. It's about discipline. And discipline is, if you want to look good and have a 6-pack ab in your 50s, you can. I walk around on the beach with my kids and people can't believe it, because I stay in such good health. And it's not because of the aesthetic appearance I'm seeking, but this is just a product of the hard work that I put forth in the discipline that I have. And because the mental and physical discipline is so intact, when big challenges like the pandemic arise, that stuff doesn't faze me. It catches me off guard maybe for a day, but I've also prepared for some eventuality that's coming, because I never sit around assuming that life's just going to coast on the crest of the wave indefinitely. I know the tsunami's coming, so I prepare for it. And when it comes, I take a deep breath and hit it head on. And so this company, flourishes. We've been through so many things since the inception of this business. Economic recessions, great recessions, decades that are lost, internet bubbles bursting, real estate bubbles bursting, 4 economic recessions, pandemics, on and on and on and on. And we flourished through every one of them. And I have so many CEOs reach out to me, how the hell are you guys doing this? How do you do this? And it's like, well, we've planned for this day. Well, how can you plan for something like this? Well, we talk about stuff. We talk about things that could possibly happen and how that may impact our organization. And then we're prepared for that thing. People have worked from home here for 25 years. We went artificial intelligence 14 years ago before Amazon did. And so it's one of those things where, we're prepared, and we're preparing for the next wave, which most people don't even know that's coming, and we'll be prepared for that too. And it's just one of those things where when you have great groups of people that function well together as a cohesive unit, I give the direction, I have the vision. It's always clear, focused, and ominous in the sense that it's a big, audacious goal that we want to aim toward. And these folks come together in the spirit of deciding how they're best going to achieve that within the context of their contributions. And I leave them alone. And I don't feel the need to get involved. And there's no fear of reciprocity. And boy, you screwed that up. And I don't get involved with that. If they screw up, they know they screwed up, and they fix it because they're motivated. They're highly motivated people. And I'm amazed, Mohammed, at how many people, Steve, reach out to me on LinkedIn and just like, God, I wish I could work for a company like this. You have no idea what I'm dealing with here. And like I said, I'm not suggesting we're omnipotent or anything like that. It's just common sense stuff. This is not brain surgery, and I'm not the one that invented it. It's just tapping into the things that we know, like love. And it sounds so foreign in organizations today. People don't really love each other. It's highly competitive. It's confrontational, toxic. And so they're competing for positions and not sharing information for fear that it's going to be stolen and somebody else will get the credit. That's, what's going on in most of these companies. That's what people deal with every day. So you got a bunch of smart people that are more than capable, that are underutilized. And as a result of that, they're miserable. So Monday's drudgery, got to go to work, sucks, hate it, can't wait for Friday, celebrate the weekend. That's their life. And those people could be doing remarkable things because they're certainly smart enough if they only had somebody that knew how to tap into that. That's why I tell people, listen, I know you want to believe that person's a pain in the ass and they're difficult to deal with. I get it. That's the convenient way to explain not being able to use somebody to their full potential. It's your job. I heard people for years bitch about millennials. Oh, those millennials. If you're complaining about kids that can help benefit your business, you got the problem. It's your problem, because there's nothing wrong with these kids. They're amazing. And the generation beneath them is even more amazing because they're thinking things that we should all be thinking. They love this. They want to be relevant. They want to have less. They don't care about acquiring stuff. They just want to live in a world that's beautiful, where people get along and be appreciated for what they do. It's super simple. And when you find those people, you let them loose and they give you the ideas you need to succeed in a new reality, instead of, I can't deal with that person. Well, if you can't deal with that person, my advice would be learn how to, because it's really not that hard. It's like having a kid.
It's non-negotiable. I don't think we have a choice. And I think those of us who are in our 50s, so, baby boomers and Gen Xers, we think we have one up on everybody else, right? And I think really sometimes we're just mocked by the younger generations because they look at us and we're not pliant enough, we're not flexible enough. We don't recognize that we don't have a choice about letting them into our workplace or not. It's what's going to happen. And so not only do we need to move over, but we need to share the seat. We need to share the stage. We need to say, teach me what you can. Let me, this reciprocal mentorship where I can teach somebody what I know because I've been with the company for 20 years. Great. Here's some things that I can teach you and hopefully share with you and enlighten you. But what can you teach me? Because you just came with a fresh outlook. You've got a new perspective on, maybe you just came out of school and you learned something that I, didn't know, still don't know, probably won't ever know unless I open up my mind and my heart and I learn from you. And, when I hear you talk, it's about that connection, the physical and mental, but it's about the mind and the heart. It's not, today we talk about IQ and EQ, but it's not about one or the other. It's about the integration. It's about recognizing the importance of bringing our emotional and our mental states into our physical states, but also into this thing called love. You don't see love. You don't measure love, right? The neuroscience can maybe talk about, what's going on up here, but it's really hard to talk about what's going on here. And when we stop calling it the fuzzy and soft skills and start calling it the essential skills, what brings people together, right? And, I think, what you were saying earlier about the weather, and if I'm planning a trip, I'll look at the weather forecast. I'm very proactive. I'm absolutely OCD, just the way that I am. But I'll look at the weather forecast and I'll plan ahead. Most people tend to look at the weather if they've got plans. But we don't look at the forecast in our lives. We don't look at the forecast. We have at work, we have 3-month or 6-month or yearly or 5-year goals, but rarely do we hold ourselves accountable, and rarely are we flexible enough. If a storm comes out of nowhere, which you can tell us about, are we nimble enough to adjust and to say, you know what? Rain wasn't in the forecast today. Shit, it's raining. What am I going to do? Right? If I'm going to, crawl into my cave and worry and I don't have an umbrella, or do I go and dance in the rain? Right? So we've got to be flexible enough to be able to adjust with short notice. And even though we're forecasting, just like you do, you've got to plan for those things that are unforeseeable. So let me ask you, you've got so much energy in your videos. The Steve that's behind the energy and the motivation, you talk about bumps and struggle along the way, and certainly I'm sure you've had some. Can you tell me, does the Steve behind the camera have, the same struggles and bumps that the rest of us do? And how did you learn from them?
Well, yeah, there's no question. I've lost both parents, my brother, my best friend. Like I said, we've been through numerous business challenges, but, I also avoided a lot of the problems that a lot of people stumble into because I exercise extreme discipline. And I'm not trying to condemn anybody, but it's like I tell my friends, or I've told people throughout the years, or young people that reach out to me and want some advice. I tell them, do whatever you can to avoid the problems a lot of people tumble into, because it's far easier to adhere to a belief system that prevents stumbling into the pit versus spending a lifetime trying to undo the damage created by bad choices, whether it's drugs, alcohol, addiction of any kind. And so I never got into that stuff. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do that stuff because I know that compromises my ability to operate at a high level. And as a result of that, I walk alone oftentimes out here, which is why the wolf is so synonymous with everything that I do, because I relate to that as my spirit animal, because the wolf can function in a group as the alpha and bring people together. They cooperate for survival. It's a very communal group. But if necessary, they'll go off on their own and survive just fine. They'll chase a moose down for 3 days out here until the animal becomes exhausted and they can finally succeed. But so I relate to that on a deep and profound level. And that's how I operate. I operate so well. And of course we have challenges and stuff, but I don't ruminate in the past, and I don't let things that catch me off guard adversely affect my focus, which is on the present and toward the future. And I spend very little time in the past, and I think that's where most people run into problems. They can't resist the temptation to reach back in the past and beat themselves up over bad decisions they made, or lost relationships, or failed businesses. And as a result of that, they just incessantly kick themselves at the expense of having the confidence to press forward. And I started this business at 21, so we haven't had business failures. We've known success because we've driven success consistently for decades. And so again, but that's based on the choices I made. I didn't bring outside investors in. I financed this with my credit card at 21 because I didn't want outside investors in. So even though most businesses fail after 7 years, we did it 10 times harder than the 10% of businesses that actually succeed, because I didn't go beg for somebody else's money. Because the mindset, in my opinion, Mohammed, is often, this is a great idea. Let's get that person's money. If it doesn't work out, oh, well, not a big deal. And that's how a lot of people think when they go raise money, and they base it on business plans. And I'm not into that. I don't build business plans because they're dreamers' manifestos, just like, mission statements. Until you've lived this stuff, you have no business writing a mission statement. I wrote a first mission statement, and I call it something different 2 years ago, when I actually, for 3 decades, did what I claim I was doing. And now I can speak to that from a position of credibility versus a fantasy that we scribble on a cocktail napkin.
Very
and
interesting.
Then so that's what I did. So I just don't, a lot of the traditional things that people buy into, I just don't, because it really doesn't make any sense. Writing a business plan at 21 would really have not benefited me at all, because we meandered all over the place just like every business does. And if you don't get proficient at being able to respond to changes that you're confronted with that require an immediate response or premeditated response, then you're screwed. And that's why a lot of businesses are struggling today, because they adhere to these plans that they have. And this is what we're going to do. It's like, well, I got news for you. Get really good at surfing, which I haven't met a surfer that goes out and surfs a 20-foot wave with a plan. It's like, okay, I'm going to have the jet ski drive me into the wave and launch me right here. And there's not going to be any sharks or any coral that I have to watch out for. And the undertow is not going to slam me into the bottom. And I've got all this planned out. It's perfect. I found the perfect spot. No, they jump in and they have enough confidence to know they're going to ride the wave. And they know it could happen, but they're going to be prepared for it. So I just, that's just how I operate. It's not for everybody. Do I have all the answers? No. But I do believe when we focus on these 4 tenets of equanimity, that life becomes surprisingly simple, because we know, based on the research and the evidence, that, when our health is good, when our relationships are healthy, when we surround ourselves with quality people, when we're in functional relationships with an intimate partner that isn't destructive and unhealthy, life's good. I mean, all the research shows that married couples, regardless of who they are, what they practice, they're happier because they have a loving partner in their life that they can spend their time with, and satisfying work. And a lot of people argue, work isn't that important. I disagree. I think it's super important, because I love my work, and I'm encouraging people to find work that's satisfying. Otherwise, you're just trying to generate income to satisfy financial expectations. And then you're spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing that, when you could be happy doing that, making what you want to make, and having the free time to do the things that are important. Like, I'll spend 4 hours today on my health and on my mind, because that's important to me,
And at 60, we'll look back and say we lived a life unlived, right? And we talk about regrets, which I want to get to in a second. But, when you're talking about this mindset, you talk about mission statements, and this is food for thought for me that I want to mull over after our call, because, mission statements, they're very aspirational, they're there, we're kind of rocketing towards them. But I love the way you're talking about them, because, whether it's knowing about the weather and being prepared, because you never know what the weather's going to throw at you, whether it's nature, you don't know a tsunami is coming. Within maybe seconds or minutes, you might have a warning, but you don't know. If you're riding the wave, you don't know what's underneath the wave. You know when it's going to crest, when it's going to crash. And so you've got to be nimble enough to be flexible enough. And when things, when something hits the fan, we look and say, I wasn't prepared. And it's always because we're too stuck on those plans or the aspirational mission statement, and not nimble enough to bend like we need. Like a tree that has deep roots is able to bend and almost kiss the ground, because it can have that flexibility. A tree that doesn't have roots will break. And so, we've got to have branches, we've got to grow, we've got to be aspirational, but at the same time, we need to be well-rooted. Let me go back to this idea of what you made me think about, and regrets. And you talk about mistakes or things we didn't do. Most of us say, oh, we don't have regrets. And I think that's also aspirational. I think we're lying to ourselves. I want to ask you, do you believe that we don't have regrets? And if your answer is no, do you have any regrets?
Well, no, I think a lot of people do have regrets. And I think oftentimes people regret what they did. And they believe as they get older, that's what regret amounts to. When in fact, all the research shows as we get older and reflect back on our life, regret isn't a product of what we did and the mistakes we made. It's what we didn't do. And so I don't have regrets in the sense that I do what I want to do, and I always have. I act upon what I know is consistent with the purpose that I've created and the passions that I've created. And that's another misconception that's out there circulating along with why and tribes and everything else. And like I said, I love those authors and I love these ideas, but they're so misunderstood. And for the average person, it just becomes this cliche, which complicates things. Like, find your purpose. Go find your passion, Mohammed. What does that mean to a 21-year-old kid? That means, what the hell is that? I mean, where am I going to find that? I'm studying engineering.
Was it lost?
Yeah. I'm
studying
medicine, which is what my parents want me to do, because that's where I'll make the most money. But I hate medicine. And it's even worse when I get out of school and realize I'm spending hours a day practicing medicine, and I really don't like it after all, after I spent 8 years in school and $200,000 in debt. And so many people just get on these paths because somebody provided them with a push that they see. And I tell young people, it's like, do it yourself. You got to step back. And as much as you love your parents, friends, pastor, whoever it is that's offering you advice, let's be honest, most of these folks that are so generously offering this advice, they've never done any of that stuff. So I prefer to take my advice from people that have actually done what I want to do, and then discover from them what they did that they can share with me, that will help me avoid the mistakes that hold most people back, that they end up regretting. And then later in life, doing the things that you know you should do to be consistent with your true self versus following somebody else's direction. And then looking back later in life and saying, damn it, if I would have done
If only, if only.
Yeah. You don't want to be doing the if only. And I can promise you, I don't have if only moments ever. It's just not a thing. I look back at my life and it's like, there's more I want to do, but I don't look back and say, I'm not a big mistake guy. I just don't believe that mistake culture. I think we're just indoctrinating people in this idea that you got to fail forward. You got to fail. Right. It's like, how about if you don't fail in the first place? That would be my preference. How about becoming proficient at not failing, making good decisions? And that's why I've made the tough decisions in business, because I can't begin to tell you how many people reach out to me. I brought these outside investors in. They're making my life miserable. They're ruining my business. Of course they are, because they want to make a profit. That's all they care about. They don't care about your long-term ambitions to create a successful business where you take care of people and actually
profits
grow.
Over people, right?
Yeah. And so we don't worry about that. We're not driven by profits. We're driven by success. We're driven by dreams. We're driven by accomplishments together. Collectively, we work on. The profits pour in because we just are committed to the right things. And unfortunately, that's not how it is. And we don't have outside investors involved. So I get to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the people that work here. And if I want to give equity up, I give it to the people that matter most, the people that make these dreams happen. So It's just, so to me, it's like a lot of failures can be avoided. I'm telling you, if you stay focused, disciplined, and avoid the mistakes that a lot of people make. Our predecessors that provide us with a blueprint of what not to do. It's like my brother. Drugs, alcohol. It's like, okay, I'm not dabbling with that. That shit doesn't work out too favorably. Yeah. So I'm not going there. So and he's like my guardian.
We still walk down that path, right?
We do. And I'm not trying to criticize anybody, make you feel bad, but this is just how I live my life. And this is consistent with the 4 tenets of equanimity. When you focus, if you're going to be married, I tell people, have a good marriage. Why dabble? Why dabble? Why make a bad decision because you're lonely? Pick somebody that you want to love and commit to it, and make sure you find somebody that's equally committed to making it work. Friends, don't have perimeter friends that are parasites sucking off you all the time. I wrote an article about this, 8 toxic people you want to avoid. Check it out on LinkedIn.
I saw that.
There's 8 personality types that we
the ruminator or the rumor monger. That's
rumor. Yeah, you know what those people are like, and we all have our idiosyncrasies. But when people come into your life and their conversations are always predicated on third-party information or woe is me or it's somebody else's fault, and you're seeing a lot of that go on right now in our world today. My problems are the product of somebody else. Somebody else did this. It's you. I'm blaming you. That's where the anger and contempt comes from. And I mentor a lot of young people, including young African-American men, who have turned out to be PhDs, professional athletes, who come from the worst communities you can imagine. I've got 2 young men that are now in their early 30s who I started mentoring when they were younger. And they came from Gary, Indiana, which at the time was the crime capital of the country. One young man, 4 of his brothers were killed in gang-related violence, and he witnessed every murder. And this young man's a PhD now, and he is the wrestling coach of the most successful wrestling program in America, high school kids. And guess what he's doing? He's teaching.
Mentoring others. He's teaching. Yeah. Pass it on. Pass it on. And,
so that's
Steve, this is where, I say to you, because I feel like you've inspired us with so much advice throughout this whole session today. But I am at the point where I ask you to give us one piece of advice that we can adopt to become better versions of ourselves, better humans, better people. Like I said, I think you've done that throughout the session today. But this is where I call it the unfiltered thought of the week. But it's one unfiltered piece of advice you can give our listeners to help them become better versions of themselves.
Well, I mean, since we kind of gravitated in this direction, there's all sorts of tidbits I would offer, but because it's relevant, we just talked about it. I would say, learn to be genuine to yourself and learn to express yourself authentically. Because what we're seeing today with the advent of social media on the rise is it's a production. Most people are putting on a theatrical production. It's this version of their life you want to believe in, but behind the scenes. And we saw it with all the stuff that's been happening in America, people jumping on this particular bandwagon because it's fashionable. And I want to look good because I want to be a part of this thing that seems to make sense on the surface. And my advice is, okay, that's great. Makes you look good. I got a better idea. Actually go do the dirty work. If you care about this stuff so much that you profess to care about, like these kids that I've mentored, this takes hard work, commitment, ongoing effort. And if you're going to make a difference in somebody's life, it's not just, hey, Facebook page, Instagram, look at me, I'm virtue signaling. It's like roll up your sleeves, get busy, get involved, and make a difference. And learn to be that person, because the world needs a lot more of those types of people. We already have a lot of phonies out there that are super good at doctoring up their photos and making it look like they're living the exceptional life. We all know that's a crock of shit. So let's be adults here. And let's get serious with ourselves and start having some deep conversations with ourselves about how I can contribute to correcting some of these problems and not just gloss over it with a paintbrush and make it appear as if I'm on the right side of the argument,
Absolutely. Don't talk about the change, be part of the change. It's the only way that we're going to make a difference is if the change starts with us. So I could talk to you for another hour, another couple hours, and I know that I'm going to tap into your energy in the future. I want to thank you for being our guest today. I've learned a lot. I will continue learning from you. And I know our guests will certainly benefit from your energy, your enthusiasm, and your insight. So keep doing what you're doing. Be a passion for others. And while others can't motivate us, they can certainly create environments where we can become motivated ourselves. And you do that. So thank you for being the Unfiltered Leader. And thank you for being my guest today.
My pleasure. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for listening to Unfiltered, the show about authentic leadership and personal growth. Like what you heard? Click subscribe, share it, and tell a friend about it. And don't forget to leave a rating.